Series of good conversations this morning, and the leaders have gone back to their respective conferences to talk to them about the framework of the budget that we have been discussing. The conversations with the leaders were good. We'll now see what the conference says to them. Obviously, they've been held to their conferences all along, and so it's a rolling, ongoing dialogue. But I feel very good about where the conversations ended up. The main topic of conversation is the minimum wage. And the minimum wage is a balance and a calibration by definition. We want to pay people a wage that allows them to lead their life with dignity. Minimum wage law was passed by FDR, governor of the state of New York, who stood in this very hallway and did business. And the minimum wage was based on the concept that a person who works full-time should have a decent living. And you can't live a decent life on the minimum wage in the state of New York right now. So we want to raise the minimum wage to a wage where a person can support a family with dignity and decency, but we want to do it in a way that stimulates the economy and certainly doesn't hinder the economy, especially in upstate New York. I'm proud to be a governor who has invested more in the upstate economy than any governor in history, period. The last thing I want is anything that slows the growth of the upstate economy. I believe the minimum wage increase done correctly will stimulate the upstate economy. But that is a calibration. The minimum wage proposal that we did has a built-in mechanism that will do that calibration. In year 3, we call for a study and a determination to be made by Division of Budget as to whether or not the minimum wage continues to increase. So we literally factor in a calibration mechanism that will make that determination starting in year 3, 4, 5, 6, etc. So I feel very good about the minimum wage proposal. It will be a benefit to everyone in the state, not just low-wage workers, because you stimulate that economy, it works for everyone. But that is the main point of discussion. We had some issues on paid family leave, which would be another great boost for the working families of New York. And there were some details that were there. But the main point is we'll now wait to hear what the leaders say after talking to their conference, and we'll go from there.
Governor, you're now on the third rationale we've heard from your administration about Medicaid, cost savings, cost shiftings. Where does that stand? Because the leaders indicate that that is a major point of contention.
I don't know. We discussed Medicaid, and it was resolved in January. We said we have to find savings in Medicaid, in the Medicaid budget. Medicaid budget is one of the big budgets in the state of New York. It's basically Medicaid and education. And we need savings in the Medicaid budget. 70% of the Medicaid budget comes from the city of New York. That's where the money is being spent. I spoke to the mayor back in January. The mayor agreed that we would work together to find savings. And that's the resolution. It's relatively a small amount of savings in the entirety of the Medicaid budget. But we live on a very tight financial budget here, what we call a 2% cap. We have brought more fiscal discipline to this state than any administration, Democrat or Republican, in modern political history. We are going to stay below that 2% cap. So when spending gets a little out of whack, we want it adjusted. And the city of New York said they would cooperate to find the savings. And we can, and we will, and that's the end of it. So there's no reason, there's no credible reason why anyone would be concerned about that, and that's not the issue that we've been discussing. The minimum wage, paid family leave, in the Assembly, they are not supportive of charter schools. The Senate is. I think it's very important that we have a package to address terrorism. So does the Senate. That was an issue, but these are more secondary issues.
Governor, what do you see CBS in Rochester? What's the phase-in look like for minimum wage upstate compared to downstate? I know it's an issue we've been talking about the last few weeks.
Well, if you remember, my initial proposal was that we phase in New York, downstate New York, let's say, at 3 years, New York City, and 6 years upstate. And so my initial proposal understands the difference between downstate New York and upstate New York. We're now talking about a longer phase in upstate New York, but most importantly, to me, is a mechanism to make the decision and the analysis at that time. See, what you're really saying is, what do you think is going to be going on in the upstate economy in 5 years and 6 years? If any one of us really knew that, we would all be billionaires sitting on a beach, right?
Doesn't that hold for the downstate economy as well?
Excuse me a second. So that's the question. What is the economy going to be in 6 years? And because the time period is so long. So we have built in a mechanism, which is division of budget, studies the indicators, studies the economy, and makes the decision at that time.
It's a 3-year mark, correct?
Yes. Downstate New York is only 3 years.
Argue against pay raises for the lawmakers if you don't get what you're looking for out of this?
Well, it's apples and oranges, right? We don't have any pay raise decision to be made.
But you do have appointees on the commission.
The commission doesn't meet now for a pay raise,
Well,
for the legislators, right?
to put it this way, does it hurt the case that lawmakers might want to make later on in the year that they want a pay raise if the budget is late, or if later on in the legislative session ethics isn't approved? Does it hurt their case that they deserve a pay raise?
Well, look, you'd have to ask the legislators, but if you're asking, do I believe it hurts their case on the pay raise is basically the analogy would be they're going to the people of the state of New York and they're saying, I believe I deserve a raise, right? When you say I believe I deserve a raise, the basis should be your performance. And if you're a legislator, you're going to want to be able to say, I passed ethics reform, not in the budget before the end of session. You're going to want to say, we got the budgets passed on time. You're going to want to be able to say there were no more scandals. We understand what happened with Sheldon Silver and Dean Skelos, and that's gone, and that's yesterday, and we've reformed ourselves. So they're going to need to be able to make that case, not just to the pay commission. They're going to need to make that case to the people of the state of New York in November when they go to seek re-election. So performance matters. If they don't pass a budget on time, obviously that is a failure of performance. Ethics reform is going to be important. Are there more scandals? And then whatever else happens between now and November. But that's the case on the pay commission. I have done a good job. I deserve a raise. Okay, let's talk about whether or not you did a good job.
Governor, what about the
Governor, what about
income
the
tax
your
cut? Or
throughway
income
plan?
tax cut?
Well, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. What about the income tax cut that's been reportedly as much as $1 billion? Is that agreed to by all parties?
We have a framework of what we call a middle class income tax cut, which would be about $1 billion, which would be a very, very big deal. Something I'm excited about. We have lowered taxes all across the board in this state. People may not feel it because taxes everywhere else are going up, and because the property taxes are going up in this state, less than usual because of the 2% cap, but property taxes are going up. But our income taxes have actually come down to the lowest level in decades, as you know. This would be an additional state income tax for middle-class families that need it desperately.
And what would be the
And at a time when they're losing faith in government and the national government is failing them, I would love to be able to say to the people of this state that has long had a reputation as the high tax state, your taxes are actually going down.
When did
And
they
Governor,
start-
what would
when
be,
did they
and
start
Governor, what
coming
would be
down?
the threshold for that tax cut? What incomes?
Up to about $300,000 for a joint married couple filing jointly.
All right, guys.
Expect bills to be printed tonight?
Community schools.
Bills are being printed as we speak, and depending what happens in conference now, you'll see an acceleration of bills being printed if there's an actual resolution. Obviously, if there's not a resolution, you won't see bills.
Is your throughway plan part of the community
Six-year
schools?
phase in on Long Island and downstate through the.
Yes.
Thanks a lot,
My
everybody.
original plan was 3 and 6